When Max Verstappen arrives at the Australian Grand Prix, one technical factor becomes extremely important for his driving style: the behaviour of the front end of the car. The race takes place at the Albert Park circuit in Melbourne, a semi-street circuit that demands precision, quick direction changes, and a car that responds instantly when the driver turns the steering wheel. Unlike some traditional permanent circuits where drivers can rely on long-flowing corners and stable aerodynamic platforms, Albert Park presents a very specific challenge. The track has multiple medium-speed corners, short braking zones, and fast transitions where the car must rotate quickly. And that is exactly why a reactive front end becomes such a crucial advantage. When engineers talk about a reactive front end, they are describing how quickly the front of the car responds to steering input. In Formula One, this response is influenced by many factors, including aerodynamic load, suspension geometry, tyre grip, and weight transfer during braking. If the front of the car reacts instantly, the driver can rotate the car earlier at corner entry and position it more efficiently for the apex. If the front end reacts slowly, the driver must wait for the car to turn, which costs time and reduces the ability to accelerate early on corner exit. Albert Park is particularly demanding in this respect. Many of the corners require drivers to brake, rotate the car quickly, and immediately prepare for the next direction change. Because the circuit was redesigned in recent seasons to increase speeds and reduce some chicanes, the rhythm of the lap has become even more dependent on precise front-end response. Drivers must trust the front tyres completely when turning into the corner. If the front end hesitates even slightly, the car drifts wide and momentum is lost. This is where Verstappen's driving style becomes especially relevant. Over the past several seasons, engineers analysing telemetry have repeatedly noticed that Verstappen prefers a car with extremely strong front-end response. He often describes the car as needing to feel pointy, meaning the nose of the car should react instantly when he turns the wheel. This characteristic allows him to rotate the car aggressively at the beginning of the corner. The advantage of this style becomes obvious when studying onboard footage and telemetry traces. As Verstappen approaches a braking zone, he applies strong initial brake pressure to transfer weight toward the front of the car. This weight transfer increases the load on the front tyres, which improves their grip. While the car is still under braking, Verstappen begins turning the steering wheel. Because the front tyres are heavily loaded, they generate significant lateral grip, and the car begins rotating immediately. This early rotation is a key part of Verstappen's technique. Instead of waiting until the car slows down completely before turning, he overlaps braking and steering in a controlled way. Engineers refer to this as trail braking. By maintaining some brake pressure while turning, the driver keeps weight on the front tyres for longer, helping them maintain grip during the initial phase of the corner. Have you ever noticed how quickly Verstappen's car seems to pivot toward the apex when he enters a corner? It almost looks like the car changes direction instantly. That visual effect is often the result of strong front-end grip combined with precise trail braking. At Albert Park, this ability to rotate the car early becomes extremely valuable. Consider the sequence of medium-speed corners that define much of the lap. In these sections, drivers must change direction rapidly while maintaining momentum. If the car rotates quickly at the first part of the corner, the driver can align the car earlier for the next phase. This allows smoother transitions and better acceleration between corners. Telemetry comparisons often reveal how this advantage appears in the data. Engineers typically examine several traces to understand driver behavior. The steering trace shows how quickly and how much the driver turns the wheel. The brake pressure trace reveals how braking is applied and released. And the throttle trace shows when the driver begins accelerating again. When analysing Verstappen's laps, engineers often notice that his steering angle increases rapidly during corner entry, indicating that he commits to the turn earlier than some other drivers. At the same time, his brake pressure trace gradually decreases rather than dropping suddenly. This suggests that he maintains controlled braking force while the car begins rotating. This combination of steering and braking helps generate the rotation needed to point the car toward the apex. Once the car reaches that apex, Verstappen can begin unwinding the steering wheel and preparing to apply throttle. The earlier the steering angle begins to decrease, the sooner the driver can start accelerating. Acceleration timing is one of the most critical factors in Formula One performance. Even a fraction of a second gain during corner exit can translate into several kilometers per hour of additional speed by the end of the straight. Over the course of a lap, these small advantages accumulate. Another important aspect of Albert Park is how the track surface evolves during the race weekend. Because the circuit is built on public roads that are normally open to traffic, the grip level at the start of the weekend is relatively low. As cars circulate during practice sessions, rubber is gradually deposited onto the asphalt, increasing grip. Drivers must constantly adapt to these changing conditions. A reactive front end can help during this process because it allows the driver to feel the available grip more clearly. Verstappen is known for having exceptional sensitivity to tyre grip, which allows him to adjust his driving inputs as conditions change. Think about the challenge of driving at the limit on a track where grip is constantly improving. Each lap may provide slightly more grip than the previous one. Drivers must judge how much more aggressively they can attack each corner. Verstappen's confidence in the front of the car helps him push closer to the limit without exceeding it. Another factor influencing front-end response is aerodynamics. Modern Formula One cars generate a large portion of their grip from aerodynamic downforce. The front wing and the floor of the car work together to create downward pressure that pushes the tyres into the track. At higher speeds, this downforce increases significantly, allowing the car to corner faster. However, aerodynamic balance is delicate. If the car produces too much front downforce relative to the rear, the car may become unstable during corner entry. If the rear produces too much downforce, the car may resist turning and understeer through the corner. Engineers must carefully balance these forces to create a car that responds predictably. Red Bull cars in recent seasons have been known for providing Verstappen with the front-end responsiveness he prefers. Engineers have refined suspension settings, aerodynamic distribution, and mechanical grip to create a car that reacts immediately when Verstappen turns the wheel. This design philosophy suits Verstappen's aggressive corner entry style. Rather than easing into corners gradually, he often commits decisively, trusting that the front tyres will generate the grip needed to rotate the car. At a circuit like Albert Park, this approach can be particularly effective. The track rewards drivers who can maintain momentum through sequences of corners. By rotating the car quickly at entry, Verstappen positions the car perfectly for the exit phase. But this style also requires exceptional precision. A car with very strong front-end response can become difficult to control if the driver overcommits. If the steering input is too aggressive, or if the rear tyres lose grip, the car may slide or become unstable. This is where Verstappen's control becomes crucial. His steering movements may appear decisive, but they are carefully calibrated to maintain the balance of the car. Instead of making large corrections, he relies on precise inputs to guide the car through the corner. Another interesting aspect of Albert Park is the presence of several braking zones that lead directly into medium-speed corners. These zones require drivers to manage weight transfer carefully. As the car decelerates, weight shifts forward, increasing the load on the front tyres. If the driver releases the brakes too quickly, the front tyres lose that load and the car may understeer. Verstappen's braking technique often helps maintain that load for longer. By gradually releasing the brakes as he turns the steering wheel, he keeps the front tyres engaged with the track. This allows the car to rotate smoothly rather than pushing wide. As the car approaches the apex, Verstappen begins transitioning toward acceleration. The steering wheel starts to straighten, reducing the lateral load on the tyres. At that moment, the throttle trace begins rising gradually. Instead of applying full throttle immediately, he feeds power in progressively to maintain traction. This smooth throttle application helps the rear tyres maintain grip while the car accelerates out of the corner. Because the car rotated earlier during entry, Verstappen often reaches the point where he can accelerate sooner than drivers who rotate later. Over the course of an entire lap at Albert Park, these small advantages become significant. Earlier rotation leads to earlier acceleration, which leads to higher speeds on the following straight. Each corner exit contributes to the overall lap time. This is why engineers emphasize the importance of front-end response when preparing for races at circuits like Albert Park. A car that reacts instantly at the front allows drivers to attack corners confidently and maintain momentum throughout the lap. And this brings us back to the central idea of this analysis. Max Verstappen needs a reactive front end at Melbourne because the layout of Albert Park rewards drivers who can rotate the car quickly and position it perfectly for corner exit. Telemetry data reveals how his braking, steering and throttle techniques work together to create that advantage. Now I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Do you think Verstappen's front-end focused driving style will give him an advantage at the Australian Grand Prix? And which driver do you think adapts best to the unique challenges of the Albert Park circuit? Let me know in the comments, because the combination of driver skill, engineering design and circuit characteristics is what makes Formula One analysis so fascinating.